Hey everyone, we've got a new pitch website, pitchpodcast.fm. Comment on your favorite episodes, get all the latest news, and discuss the podcast with us. Pitchpodcast.fm. If you become a subscriber, you'll be able to access real pitches and ad-free episodes, watch member-only live streams starring us, your hosts, and ask questions we'll answer in future pitch episodes. Join us at pitchpodcast.fm and help us bring you more great content.
Hi, welcome to another episode of Pitch, Connecting Storytellers with the World. I'm Leah St. Marie.
And I'm Angel.
And today we have a guest with us. Joelle Garfinkel has worked on 20 shows during her 16-year career as a post-PA, writer's assistant, showrunner's assistant, script coordinator, staff writer, and freelance television writer. During that time, she created the web series Cam Girls, penned episodes for Tig and Seek, Foundation, Fire Country, and was staffed on NBC's Ordinary Joe. Her play, Residual Fear, based on her personal experience with pregnancy loss, was a Eugene O'Neill semifinalist. Joelle was also a WB Writers Workshop finalist and a participant in the Jewish Federation's Masterclass program. She's the founder of Green Envelope Grocery Aid, a mutual aid fund started during the strike that awards $100 grocery grants to all industry professionals in need. Welcome, Joelle.
Thank you. It's always so overwhelming hearing your bio back. You're like, oh my God, who's that person?
You
have so impressive too.
Yeah, you have such an impressive bio. I don't know that everybody hearing their bio is as overwhelmed, but you've got a great one. So.
Yeah, no, it's and I just updated it this summer, so it's yeah.
And that's how we were connected, Joelle, is I follow you on Twitter and you follow me on Twitter, and then you posted about this. I think it was back in May. Donating.
Yeah, it was the first week of June.
Yeah, so, and you've been doing it ever since, and you've raised over $100,000 for the Green Envelope Aid, is that right?
Yeah, it's up to, I just did tallies yesterday, it's up to $234,000, I know. And it's reached the point that now people are she's almost raised $250,000, which is just, it's mind-boggling because when it first started, it was, it's so special being here with you because you really were one of the first people that reached out about it. And it was so grassroots. I mean, it was all Twitter DMs back when it was called Twitter and you could DM,
Yeah.
So yeah, it's really just taken off in an incredible, unexpected way.
So tell me, $200,000, how many individuals does that equal? Do you have the math on that?
Oh yeah, no, I'm a Virgo, so I keep receipts. That's the only organizing, background I have. But I believe it's up to, I could look up the exact number, but it's around 2,000, closer to 2,300 individual donors. And I would say our average donation minus the showrunner surge, which was incredible. And that was back in the end of August, right before Labor Day, a bunch of showrunners, donated up to $30,000 in one day. And that was just incredible, and right when we needed it and stuff. But aside from that, the average donation has been $30. And it's mainly people that, are fans or, supporters of TV. One of the most meaningful donations to me is a woman that she's a writer and a professor, and she's given $10 almost every week since I've started it. And it's and every single time I see her donation come in, it just fills me with so much, because her first message about it was that she's I can't give much, but I'll try and be as consistent. And she has, and it's, something like that is the most meaningful as far as, we're all supporting each other.
For the people who aren't familiar with what Green Envelope is, give a quick overview of what you're doing, why you're doing it, as if, they've never heard it before, and why it's important, especially now, why it's been important and necessary this year.
Yeah. So this all started, as Leah said, in the middle of the strike. And, the impetus for it was, and the reason it's called Green Envelope is I got a residual check about a month into the strike when, we desperately needed it most. Like the writer's strike, I think, that first month we were all like really gung-ho, but for me especially, I was kind of naive as far as like the financial toll that this would take. And so and I think a lot of us kind of felt that way. And so getting that residual check, and it was I was used to getting like 40-cent residual checks on like the streaming shows and and shows that had been canceled, and this was for a broadcast show, and it was like the same amount as my monthly bills, like almost to the dollar. And so the relief that I felt was palpable. Like I, felt this immediate relief at such a, meaningful time when I was stressed about how am I going to pay next month's bills. And, the first person I thought of was a writer's PA on the show that, she had been, having conversations with me about her own, struggles and stuff. And, as members of the Writers Guild, like we do have, there's the Writers Guild strike funds and loans and there were entertainment community fund, but there were certain people that seemed to be falling through the cracks a little bit. That was like the lower level support staff. And so, I messaged her and I was like, would it be helpful for you if I Venmoed you $100 for groceries? And, because it was like something to pay this forward and give someone else this sense of relief that I felt. And she was so grateful. So, like it was huge to her. And so I was like, okay, like I can do this for one more person. And so I just went on Twitter, like as one does. And, and I said, if there's anyone that's struggling right now, like I just got a residual check and I would love to help someone out. And so, a bunch of people reached out via DM, and I think originally I was going to do it as like a raffle because it was like you could only do it for one other person. And so, but what the amazing thing, what happened was other writers reached out to me and they're like, I just got a residual check. Can I send you money? And like, we can sponsor 2 more writers or 3 more writers. And, by the end of that night, it was like I had enough money to cover everybody that had reached out to me. And, and I asked a writer friend of mine, I'm like, do you think that I could do this and like make this a thing? And she's like, go for it. And so then I called, my dad and my accountant the next day and made sure everything was copacetic, that I wasn't going to get myself, into trouble. 'Cause that would be terrible, like goodwill. And then it. But yeah, and then so I just, literally just started doing this where I was like, if anyone needs money for groceries, message me. We'll verify that you work in the entertainment industry, and we'll send you money. And people donated. Like by the end of that first day, we had raised $5,000, and by like the end of the first week, we had raised $10,000.
Wow.
And yeah, so that's what how it started. And, it continues to be like, I've had, so many people that have helped along the way. But it's mainly me going through applications and, and then sending, grants via Venmo or PayPal. And we say it's groceries because, the alliteration of green envelope and grocery sounds fantastic. But like, it's $100 for whatever you need and like in emergency aid. And so to date we've raised, almost $250,000, which again is insane. And have given away, 2,300 of these grants to people and are now able to give repeat funds and also very quickly, it started as lower level writers and support staff. And then within 2 weeks, it seemed like, SAG was going to be going on strike and our crew members were really hurting too. And so we opened it up to everybody. And so I'm very proud that we're one of the few funds that, like, if you've got a union card, an IMDb page, or your name is on a call sheet somewhere, you can prove some sort of entertainment connection, you will get $100.
That's amazing. What's the for the people who don't know, what's the significance specifically of green envelopes themselves?
Oh my God. Yes, I totally skipped over that part. Thank you. So our residual checks come in green envelopes. They're like a beautiful mint green, and like, you know, there's an inside joke of like when you get a green envelope, it's, you know, gives you that instant feeling. And, you know, what's cool about it is that, you know, it does prompt writers, like when they get their green envelopes, they're like, oh yeah, I'll give some money to Joelle. And so it's just, you know, and the other symbol thing about it was one of the big things we were fighting for during the strike were residuals and better residuals for streaming. And so it, you know, it became a symbol of like, this is exactly what we're fighting for, and like how special that something that we you know fought and earned was now supplementing people that needed it.
Well done.
Thank you.
Are you going to keep doing this? Is this something like this is your life's work now?
Yeah, so that's like the big question, and honestly, that's the big question that's been brewing since July. Like, I've said this so many times now, but like, you know, this whole process has been like putting down train track as the train is going and being like, I didn't even know I could drive a train. And so, you know, there's been like a lot of, you know, figuring stuff out on the fly. And like, I did talk to accountants, you know, back in August about starting it as a nonprofit. And it seemed like the pause and like the money that was going to be involved in it, I was like, I want to just get people need money now, you know? So, you know, for right now, I'm continuing it through at least the end of the holidays. And I'm starting to talk to people about, you know, eventually converting this into a nonprofit or getting absorbed by someone. Because I think for me, this has really opened my eyes to the fact that we need something like this in the industry. And, you know, and even though the strikes are over, you know, people are struggling. I know personally for me, I'm struggling more now than I was during the strikes. And so it's like there is going to be a need for this moving forward. So, you know, I am in the process of figuring out those next steps and wanting to continue with it long term.
So let the audience know where they can donate and where they can request aid.
Yes. So donations can be sent to via Venmo, which is Venmo Joelle Garfinkel. I have QR codes on my Twitter page, my Instagram. And then PayPal, same thing, /green envelope aid. And, you know, QR codes. And then the application, people can email greenenvelopegroceryaid@gmail.com, and they'll get an automatic response back that has the application link. The process right now is that there's an application link that is just very easy and basic, and you know, name, IMDb links, anything to verify that one, you work in the industry and you're a real person, and then where you want the money to go, and it takes me about 3 weeks to go through, you know, applications and send money, yeah, so that's, and all this information
Amazing.
is up on all my socials, which I will, yeah.
And now I want to do the follow-up regular question of, you're here now and you're like this champion of writers and crew members and SAG members that have all suffered through the strike. How did you get here?
Yeah, so I know, just randomly. So yeah, I mean, I am a third generation LA. I grew up in LA. I kind of knew from a young age I wanted to be a writer and in this business, because I was very shy as a kid. Did, like, to the point that I almost got held back. And so did acting classes, loved, you know, movies and film, but also loved writing, you know, was the annoying kid that wrote plays for my friends to perform during recess. And yeah, exactly.
Same. Yeah.
Yeah. And that's how we all end up in this. Like, it's, you know, and I remember my grandma telling me, you know, that there were people that wrote movies and TV shows when I was 8. So I was like, that's what I want to do. And so went to Cal State Northridge for undergrad, and then ended up graduating early, getting a job as a post PA. And then, you know, when I first started out, I was honestly very intimidated to become a writer. Like I felt like that was so, because my family, even though I grew up in LA, my family is not associated with the industry at all, and was like not discouraging, but I think because I was so shy and, you have to have thick skin and, they were just very, and still are, to be honest with you, like worried about, my success in this. And so, but I knew I was very organized. I was like, I loved producing. So I was like, I'll go that route. And the first 6 months that I was working, my school, they put on a screenwriting showcase that's usually for the graduate students. And so my script was selected as an undergrad and also the only woman that year, which I just have to shout out. Yes. But like, that was really the thing that I was like, okay, like maybe I could pursue this. So then the wonderful thing working as a post PA is you have such access to showrunners. And so, I started talking to my showrunner about how I wanted to be a writer. And it was actually, I was working on a show called In Plain Sight. And I credit Mary McCormick for starting my writing career, which is hysterical because we were in an ADR session and I was like very nervously like, I have a script and I would love to be in the writer's room. And Mary was like, read her script. And he did. And then I became the writer's assistant the next season. And so, have worked on 20 shows since then and made it into the writer's room and then, kind of had the unlucky path that many of us do of working on, one season shows or shows that don't get, a full order or, showrunners get fired and then a whole new staff comes in. So it was like, from the time I was 24, people were like, next year you'll be staffed. And then that never happened. But I was lucky enough to work for showrunners that, would give me a freelance. And then eventually I did get, called up as a staff writer on Ordinary Joe, which was just the best experience. Yeah, that's very long-winded. I'm sorry.
Oh, that's great. That's great. As a writer, what's your like regular routine? Because I know, when seasoned writers talk to young writers, the old adage is writers write, like shut up and write, like go write. Like what does your like writing routine look like now that you've been in so many rooms, you've worked in so many like scenarios as a writer's assistant? What's your like nuts and bolts week to week like writing routine?
Yeah, and I'll say, I think that, when I was in my 20s, I wrote all the time. Any free chance I got, I was writing. And like one year when I was working for a showrunner's assistant, I wrote like an insane amount, like 9 pilots in 1 year. Some of them were co-written, some of them, but I do think that is, thank you. That is like, being prolific, especially when you're able to, it is key because not only does it teach you, how to write and stuff. And like the first script that I got produced was actually one of my very first pilots, the Cam Girls web series. And it was like a pilot I wrote based on a real experience that happened to me. And, and the first draft of it was not great. Like it was, 2 broke girls. I'm not a sitcom writer, and stuff. And, but I kept giving it to a writer friend of mine, David Slack. And he's like, well, what if you try this version? What if you try this version? And eventually he and his amazing wife formed a production company. And they were like, we really like that Cam Girls idea. Like what version of it? And so, and I'd written that script in 3 different versions, and eventually it became a web series. And it was the thing, that like really taught me how to write. So I think that is, it's key, like just writing all the time. And, and I think too, a lot of people, when they're first starting out, they're trying to figure out what their brand is, and I had always worked in hour long and I kind of bounce back and forth between family drama and genre and still do. But I think that when you're finding your voice as a writer, there's less of an emphasis of figuring out what your brand is and just figuring out what you enjoy, because that will eventually become your brand. So the more that you do it, the more that you'll figure that out and really hone those skills. So that was, definitely as I was like, starting out, younger writer. And then I think, having a kid, and especially being a single parent, that changes a lot, especially for me. And so I have to be much more focused now in my writing. And a lot of times, like, I really spend more time on the like brainstorm and like, beginning process and stuff, which I used to kind of have a hang up about, that I'm like, that's not really writing. But it's like, like even going on a walk and like clearing my head and stuff, and then writing notes in the notes app, that will eventually become an outline or beat sheet or scene. Like that has been so instrumental to my process now, because then when I actually have the time to sit down and write, I've kind of done all this like pre-work. But yeah, I mean, I also think another thing that has been happening that I've talked to with a few writers is, during the strike, I think we all kind of had, adjustments to our writing process and, creativity. For me personally, I wasn't writing at all, and stuff. So I think that, there is kind of this big adjustment, with everybody right now of like figuring out what our process is and kind of getting back into it. And then also how much, a lot of us have changed post-strike, and being in it. I think that one of the real big silver linings of the strike was that, a lot of people, especially younger writers, like it was the first time we were really able to talk in an open way about some of the shame that we're feeling about where we're at in our career, and like, and then realizing that, no, we're all kind of on the same, footing. We all kind of have these same struggles. So I do think that a lot of people are, they just feel very different, post-strike and are adjusting their process. So I'm telling everybody right now, I'm like, just go easy, go what works for you. And so, but I think, being able to write every day, and I do try to write every day, is the key.
Absolutely. I think you're right. And you hit the nail on the head when you said that the strike was so very unifying, because we all have these same issues and same problems in the industry, but it has felt so isolating in previous years that I think that's something that the strike cracked open for everyone is, no, we are all the same and we have the same struggles, especially living in Los Angeles.
Yes. Yeah, it was really huge. And I think it was very special to be like on the line with, people that haven't been in a room yet, and pre-WGA writers and stuff. And then, seasoned showrunners that have done huge shows and people know who they are. And it was like everybody was able to kind of talk about the frustrations together.
Mm-hmm. So let me ask you, you have this prolific career, you're a great writer. What is the next step for you? What do you want to have in your career next? Are you gunning towards a showrunner position?
I mean, that is always the goal. Like, I would love to, eventually sell and create a show. And I think that is, what is kind of happening next for me and stuff, because I've been so frustrated by staffing and have kind of been stuck in that, assistant route. There was a great article that came out a couple weeks ago about, how the assistant ladder is broken. And, for me, I think especially being a single mom, and I'll get, a little vulnerable here right now, but it's like I've always defaulted to what is safe, and having a paycheck is the thing that has felt safe. But, we talk about the changes post-strike, and I think for me personally, now feels like the time to take a risk in my career. And so like, my next step, like just being very simple, is just, I'm not going to take support staff jobs anymore. I am really going to focus on writing, and whether that is getting staffed, whether that's selling a show. I'm very excited because I'm writing a feature right now that, is and I haven't written a feature in forever. So it's very exciting to, pursue that. So yeah, I think for me, the big step, and if like the goal of next year is just like really firmly establishing myself as a writer and not, script coordinator Joelle.
That's a great plan going forward. I like it's so exciting to hear.
Yeah.
And I think because you have so much experience at so many steps along the way, that you're probably primed and ready for it in a way that like not a lot of people are. A lot of people are like, oh, I wrote a pilot. Like, what are my odds on selling this show? And it's like, well, there's people who've been doing this for 20 years and learning every like position along the way who also wrote 9 pilots in a year at one point. And that's the
Yes.
competition. So who are they going to hire and who are they going to trust to run these things? So it sounds like you set yourself up for success in the best way possible.
Yeah, and I mean, I think that my story, it is unique in some ways, but it's also very universal. Like a lot of people that I've talked to have kind of been, hitting this wall, like this, where you can't get to the next step. Even though you have the experience, you have the talent, you have all of this, and so it's been really wonderful to be like, listen, I'm taking a risk. I think you should, and kind of inspiring that because, if we don't bet on ourselves in this business, nobody else will. And so, I really, I feel very grateful that I'm like finally able to do that with myself and encourage everyone else to.
I love that. Your trajectory reminds me of George Clooney in a way, because when he was on ER,
oh my God.
He was working ER, but when they had the breaks between seasons, he would go out and he would do a feature film, unlike some of the other cast members. And so you're not only working on shows and writing on shows, but in your free time, you're still writing your own work. So you're like making sure the odds are stacked in your favor by doing all of this work now so that it pays off later, which is something I think that other writers can benefit from hearing.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think that, when we talk about writing every day, like I don't mean just writing a script, like I mean journaling. I have a blog that I keep updated, writing a feature, writing a poem. I wrote a novel I'm sending queries for and stuff. And so, I think like as writers, the more that we can kind of dip our toes into other mediums, it just informs the things, everything else.
So because this podcast is called Pitch, where would you say you have learned the most about pitching?
Oh, that is such a great question, and I'm so excited to answer it.
I'm excited to hear the answer.
So I will say I have had the great fortune of being, a showrunner's assistant for amazing writers, one of which is Josh Friedman, who is, he created Sarah Connor Chronicles, which is one of the best TV shows, in my opinion. Co-wrote War of the Worlds, wrote one of the Avatars. Like, he is just an incredible writer. And, I will say being a showrunner's assistant, especially when you're a younger writer, if you get, to work with someone that is generous and kind, like I did with Josh, you get a front row access to their pitches, their, how they write. I mean, I would literally, Josh was so wonderful. Like, I would sit like behind him as he was typing. And like, that was such a master class in like just writing and a process and stuff. But yeah, so getting to be around him, when he like formed pitches and stuff like that, it was amazing. And like, the year that I was his assistant, he was working on a pilot with John August, who is, also a legend. And so I will say that is probably one of the career highlights, was getting to witness Josh and John work on this project together. That, by the way, did not get picked up didn't even get shot.
Wow.
I know, it's insane. But getting to listen to the two of them pitch and stuff was just, that was a dream. And then, and also just getting because witnessing it, you just get so much more feedback and experience as opposed to, anything that you would get in a class or advice and stuff like that, because you're seeing people of that nature, do what they do best and have an unfettered access. So yeah, I always encourage people, who are starting out to work for showrunners, because if you get that access, it is just the best.
And it's such a coveted position because there's so few of them.
Mm-hmm.
of all the aspiring writers in the world, let alone Los Angeles, the tens of thousands, there's a couple hundred showrunners who have assistants and then would, allow them to sit in on their process and really like give them that unfettered access. So it's like a prime position for people who can't become a showrunner assistant.
Yes. Yeah.
What do you suggest?
Is.
What are some of the hallmarks to great pitching that you could share or impart?
Yeah, I mean, I think part of it and what made them so great and getting to witness it and stuff is like, really knowing what the project is and what you bring to it and stuff. And like, and practicing it as much as possible. My friends that, pitch now, like we always help each other and stuff. And in terms of that, like, but I think the thing that, if you can bring a special spin to it and say and be able to convey your passion, that is so, so important.
I've been thinking a lot about the personal passion component of pitching and writing and selling projects. And I feel like that's the contagious part. That's the infectious part. Because at a certain level, everybody can write. At a certain level, everybody can come up with cool concepts and everybody can write a cool concept. But the unique thing for any individual with a story is my personal passion for it, which then is contagious, like a yawn or like laughter. If someone's laughing, you automatically feel a little bit more buoyant, right? And that's I think that's an underappreciated aspect of being a writer and really selling shows. Would you say you've witnessed that, or is that like accurate, or is that not?
No, I mean, that is 100%. And I think that is the magic thing. And for me, one of the struggles that I had in my writing and like being, discovered and stuff early on was that, people were like, you're a great writer. We can tell that you get the concept, but like the X factor isn't there, and it was so frustrating to hear because it was like, I didn't know what that piece was, but like it is like the magic that is inside and stuff. And so, and for me, the thing was like when I started writing, about personal experiences that were so raw, like the play, that was about my experience with pregnancy loss. Like that was the thing that I started getting meetings and, and got staffed off of and got my freelances off of. And so it's finding, I think, that piece that makes that someone feels passionate about, but then the other part of it is that passion is what people feel connected to. Because once they have that personal connection to it, they're hooked, And so it's like you have to come from, it's got to be special in the sense that it's like, it leaves you feeling something, but it is also relatable. And so, if you can nail those two things, I think that's the key.
All right. I know Leah has some questions, but I have one more thing I want to ask on this tangent, and then I'll stop.
Yes.
So some of the best showrunners that you've worked for, I don't want you to like out them by answering this question, but would you say they are really excellent at manufacturing the perception of that passion? Or are they genuinely only bringing projects that they feel that passion to pitch and to market?
I think that I think that that's twofold. I think that, with pitching and stuff like that, they need to have that, passion and stuff like that. But I think that their own personal brand and their own experience goes a long way. I think what I've seen as far as shows being the most successful is when those showrunners are able to translate that into writers that also share that vision and then can take it to the next, step. So I think that that's what I've seen is not even their own personal passion, but it's like finding the people that can take that next step.
I think there's something unique about the showrunner position, and a lot of writers think that they're into the industry as a manager or agent. But I think something that's forgotten in that equation is, no, you can find a good producer if you're a feature film writer, but if you're a TV writer, you find a good showrunner and show your stuff to them, then that could be the rung into the ladder of your career. But there's something that I want to circle back to that you were saying about the Eugene O'Neill thing that you won. So you're a playwright and you entered into this contest and you won this contest or you were placed in this contest, and that is the material that got you picked up and introduced into Hollywood, let's say.
Yeah.
What is so cool is the question that every screenwriter has is, how do I make that next step into the introduction? And there's no one way answer, right? It is contests, it is posting your stuff maybe online or sharing it with friends. But can you talk about other avenues that you've seen work for other writer friends of yours?
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, I know writers that have gotten staffed off of like being, magazine writers and, have written articles and stuff like that. I know a lot of writers that have become playwrights, and stuff, and then have, had success with that, and then have gotten in through that way. Contests are a big thing now, especially, the ones that are run by the studios. So the Warner Brothers program, Disney, CBS has a great program. Those are all fantastic and, lead into it. And I think there is a big misconception of, a lot of emphasis is getting an agent or a manager, especially starting out and seeing that as the route to success. And like, everyone that I've talked to, my own personal experience is, your reps are not going to be the ones to get you your first job. But if you place in these contests, if you, get into these different programs and stuff, that will be the way that you get your agent that can, eventually give you clout and then, help you with other things. But, so I would say, don't focus on managers and agents, focus on the writing and focus on, getting out there. And I think, another big thing is just fostering relationships, because one thing that I do want to note about these contests is that it does take a lot of money and a lot of time, and stuff. And that access is not for everybody, I think a lot of people can get frustrated in terms of, well, I don't have $100 to spend to get notes or feedback. And so, I think as long as you are writing and you are making connections and the internet is such a blessing and a curse, right? Because there's a lot of bad stuff on the internet, but you and I met via Twitter, and I was able to launch this, amazing program via the internet. And so, I do think finding tracking boards, finding mixers. A friend of mine, Joseph Wamba, he runs, along with another friend of mine, Yelena Warsh, they run the WGA virtual mix, which started out, I believe, during COVID. And it's, a huge mixer now. And I know a lot of people that have met, through that. So I think that, fostering the relationships and writing are the two keys to the entry points.
I love that.
Oh, and I was just going to say, and to that end, what was so crazy to me about the play and everything that happened from that was, at that point I had written over a dozen pilots, I had, worked and was a script coordinator. I don't think I had gotten a freelance yet, but I was in the guild, and stuff. And I wrote the play because it was such a vulnerable, raw story. And I wrote it specifically as not a screenplay because I was I need to get this out, but I don't want it to feel like work. And the intention with it was I was never going to, I was just going to share it with my close friends to be this is what I've been experiencing for the past, few months and why I disappeared for a little bit. And they were so encouraging and they're this is beautiful. You need to share this. And so naively, I submitted to the Eugene O'Neill, which is the biggest playwriting competition. Lin-Manuel Miranda, wins it, and huge people and stuff. And so, to become a semifinalist for that, it was such a, oh my God, was in this, way above my way out over my skis. And so, and then it became, I said, the thing that, got me the most meetings. And so, and from my standpoint, I was I've written 12 pilots and haven't gotten the same, So it's just, you never know. And just writing and finding that special thing, it can change everything.
I don't know how to follow that up. That's just, you said connections and keep writing. And I think that has been the standard of all the guests that we've interviewed have said that when we ask them that question.
Yeah. Yeah. Also, it's super helpful to hear about the sheer volume of projects you have written. You're like, I've written 12 pilots, and then I wrote a play, and then I feel like sometimes early on in their careers, early on in the process, we're like, oh, I wrote a script, or I wrote 2. Why aren't I a thing? Why aren't I doing a thing? And you're over here like, I've written a dozen pilots. Yeah. Forget about the features. Forget about the play I wrote. I've written 12 pilots.
Yeah.
There's an old screenwriting book. It's not how to write screenplays. It's like someone interviewed a bunch of working writers, and they were like, what's your advice, or what are your insights? And one of the guys said that, your writing really sucks until you've written about 1.5 feet of pages off the floor. I forget who said it, but yeah, I always remember that. I'm like, wow, 1.5 feet of pages off the floor, which is, such a helpful thing to hear early on when you're like, oh, I've written 2
so
things.
Visual. Yeah.
Like, where's my agent? Why aren't I repped? It's like, no, bro, you got more to go.
Yeah, totally.
More inches to go.
I know. And it's like, I love that, because I forget what that book is, but I've read it too, and it's fantastic. But yeah, and it's like such a visual too, because you're like 1.5 feet, that's so much. And that has been very much my experience. Like, that's how I, have gotten better as a writer and stuff. And but what is, kind of the frustrating thing is there is no one way. Like, I also know people that have written one script and are, staff writers and showrunners. And I know some people that, have never written a sample and, started as an assistant and have just, so those stories are frustrating to hear for those of us that are grinding away. But it's also, there is some hope in that too, right? That it's like, you don't know the path. Like, that is what makes it very tricky. And nobody's path looks the same. Like, there may be a lot of similarities and stuff, but everybody has their own path to getting the kind of career that they want. And, so that's why, the writing and connections things, like, those are the only 2 things you can control. And that was something for me, like, when I was in my 20s, why I was so, adamant about writing all the time is I'm like, I can't control if I'm getting hired. I can't control if I'm getting staffed. I can't control any of this. Like, there's so little that we can control in this business because of so many factors. But the one thing as writers that we can control is if we're writing. So I'm going to write, and figure out what makes sense and what will, eventually get us over that hump.
I love that.
Leah, do you have a final question, or is there anything you wanted to?
Okay. So what is it that you wish people would ask you that they haven't asked you yet?
Oh my God. Does it have to be about writing? Because I wish that people would ask me. Can I watch your child so you can take a nap? That is the number one thing I wish people would ask me. Although here's the thing is, I mentioned how great my kid is, which, by the way, how fantastic my 5.5-year-old has not interrupted this whole time. Shout out to Jack.
Shout out to Jack.
Jackie Hardisaki.
No, that is not his nickname. Don't start that.
But yeah, I mean, it is my son does let me take a nap, but it is really hard to being a single mom and doing as much. And so, yeah, I wish that people, if there was more.
Would you offer some sort of writing mentorship to someone in exchange for babysitting?
I mean, of course. Yeah. The problem is I say this, but then I'm like, I'd rather just spend time with him. And so I wish that someone would just I guess the question is, can someone force me to just take a nap? That would be fantastic.
That's fantastic. That is fantastic.
Well, thank you so much, Joelle. This has been such a pleasure, and I love Green Envelope. I've benefited from it. I hope that people listening to this podcast will sign up, give money, get money, support you in any way.
Yes, especially, through the holidays, like this is going to be a tough year and it is giving season. So as much as we can help people, like it's been really wonderful. The people that I've been sending funds to this week, a lot of them have been like, great, now I can like have a Thanksgiving dinner. So, so that's, very, very beautiful and special and love to help out more.
Give us a quick reminder of how people can get in touch and what to look for online.
Yeah, so the quickest way is to email greenenvelopegroceryaid@gmail.com. And that will give you donation information, that will give you the application, and also the status of where we're at as far as sending the grants. So I try to update, like we're sending grants from this day so people can kind of follow along. And then I'm also on Twitter at Miss Joelle Garf. And so all the application link is in my bio. And I'm on Instagram as Joelle_Garfinkel. And the application link is on my bio there, along with QR codes to donate.
Very cool. Well, best of luck with all of your writing projects.
Thank you.
See you in the showrunner seat very soon and for a long time to come.
Yes.
And thanks for coming on and sharing everything. You've been fantastic.
Thank you guys. This has been so much fun. And again, Leah, thank you so much for, it is so special, you just being, one of the early people and supporters. And so I'm so happy to be here and so nice to be here with you guys. Thank you.
Let's do it again at some point. What do you say?
Yes, I would love that. Yes,
right.
Absolutely.
Season 3, we'll all have some new stories. We'll have some new projects to talk about. The strike will be far behind us. We'll get together and do it again.
Oh, it'll be so great. I love it.
All right. Well, I'm Angel. Cheers from Hollywood.
I'm Leah. Cheers from Boyle Heights, I guess.
And I'm Joelle. Cheers from Burbank.
If you're on the fence about subscribing, know that a portion of all subscription fees go toward the nonprofit Young Storytellers, raising voices one story at a time.